let me just say that feel free to ask questions at any time. It's a lot of information, and just also as a caveat, all of this information is kind of high level information. We're not going to go into super detail about any of this stuff. So just know that there is a lot more detail than what we're going to share today, but we can't go too deep into any of these things today, or else this training would last for an entire week.
Are you guys able to see my screen, the program in financial management?
Yep.
Okay, thank you, Latifah. All right, let me go ahead and, okay. Jim, you are ready to take it away.
Yeah, okay. So these are the things we're going to cover today. And again, it's just going to be kind of high level discussions, program director expectations, what kind of internal policies and procedures you need to have. We'll talk a little bit about prohibited activities, then member management, and under member management, we'll talk a little bit about required documents, enrolling members, and then exit and compelling personal circumstances. And then we'll talk again at a high level about financial management for program directors. So that's what we'll cover in this part. Okay, so program management. The program management, and I know that the folks on this call or on this virtual meeting today have different roles, but in general, the program director and the staff in general provide the management and leadership of local AmeriCorps programs. The volunteer tendency staff are here to support you, but we do not do the day-to-day operations of programs. That falls to you all. So some expectations and skills that program directors need to have, obviously time management, ability to multitask and meet various deadlines, because there's lots of things going on. There are lots of federal requirements and deadlines that we'll talk about a little bit. And then Volunteer Tennessee has some deadlines that we ask of programs. And then internally within your own agency, all of you will have deadlines and things that you have to do for your own agency. So another important thing for program directors to have is strong administrative and systems and record keeping skills. Because this is a federal grant, there are record requirements and record retention requirements. And if you're not properly maintaining and holding on to those documents, then that could cause problems. Again, the basic AmeriCorps financial management, we don't expect the general program staff to be accountants. So we know that you have people in your agency to do the financial stuff, but you should have at least kind of a surface knowledge of how the AmeriCorps budget works and where the funding within your budget is going for different things and how all of that works. Leadership skills obviously are very important for program directors, and because in most of the programs, the program director is the primary contact with the member or with the members. Some of you will have sites, and then you have site supervisors, and obviously they're the day-to-day contact, but the program director is essentially in charge of wrangling all of that and making sure that the train stays on the tracks and gets to the station on time. You also need the ability to work alongside and manage diverse personalities, abilities, including persons with disabilities, backgrounds and work styles, because AmeriCorps draws people from all walks of life, all ages, all kinds of ethnic diversity. It's just a lot of different kinds of people that come to AmeriCorps. So it's really important that program staff understand how to work with people from diverse backgrounds. Member management is really important, including making sure that members get trained and that they have a quality experience. Now, we don't expect program directors to provide every single training that the members need. We understand that you may need to bring in outside trainers to do specific things to prepare the members to have the skills they need for their service. But all of that is under the general realm of responsibilities for program directors to make sure all of that training is happening. Then it's really important that program directors be able to collect data and then also take that data and turn it into progress reports. Because again, this is a federal grant and you can't just say that you've tutored 20 children. You need to be able to show with some sort of record that you've tutored 20 children. Because if it's not written down, and by written I mean either like on a sign-in sheet that's physical or some sort of electronic tracking. So I'm not being literal in terms of writing things, but if it's not written down, it doesn't exist. And then it's also really important that program staff support Team Tennessee, which is what we call the broader universe of all the AmeriCorps programs that. Oops, we just lost the slideshow. But Team Tennessee is the broader universe of all the AmeriCorps programs that we have across the state. And we have things like the program director retreat, and today is geared towards new programs and new program staff. But we'll have an all program staff meeting next week, and then we will have other meetings throughout the year, and we expect program directors to participate in all of that. And then we're trying to get back on track of having in-person statewide events, and we love to have programs participate in that to the best of their ability. Candace, do you need me to pull up that slideshow?
No, my internet was kind of wonky for a second, but I think I'm back on track. If it happens again, then we'll switch it to break.
Okay, well, I'm not seeing anything.
Oh, you're not?
Shared, yeah. Sorry, everyone, while we work through the technical difficulties. And also just...
back up now?
No.
Interesting.
We've got also a mix of folks. We've got operational programs on the call, and then also planning grants. And for those of you with planning grants, some of this stuff won't necessarily apply, including the stuff about the member management. That's not going to apply right now, but if you decide to apply for an operational grant and actually host AmeriCorps members, all of this stuff will become relevant then. Oh, there we go. Okay. So yeah, okay. I think we were done with that slide. Okay, great. So every AmeriCorps program needs to have certain internal policies and procedures that need to be written down and that you need to follow. The first one, and we'll talk a little bit more about National Service Criminal History checks in today, but then tomorrow will be dedicated to National Service Criminal History checks. So that'll be a deep dive in that. So you need a policy related to National Service Criminal History checks, member enrollment and exit, staff and member timekeeping, record keeping. You need a written training plan, and then you need a written policy on teleservice if your program allows it. And we'll go into each of these in a little bit more detail. And then all of the program policies must comply with the appropriate AmeriCorps policies on those issues. So your policy can't contradict what the AmeriCorps agency requires as part of its policies. Okay, so National Service Criminal History check policy requirements. So the policy must have, it needs to have a description of your check process as a condition of AmeriCorps grant funding, and how your program will address all the different requirements under the National Criminal History Check national policy and requirements. including which AmeriCorps approved sources will be used to conduct the required checks. So where's the money going to come from to do these checks? That should be in your policy. And again, there'll be a deep dive on all of this stuff tomorrow in terms of what's required. The policy needs to have a description of the actions that each staff member is going to do to determine who must have a check and which elements of the check apply to that individual. Because not just because your agency has an AmeriCorps grant doesn't mean everyone in your agency has to have a national service criminal history check. But you need to know who does need to have it and then which components of the check they need to have. And that should be spelled out in your policy, how you're going to determine that. It should also have a description of how the staff are going to inform the individuals of their rights related to the National Service Criminal History Check. So privacy, also including your privacy practices and how the results are going to be used by the program. It should include a description of the actions the staff are going to do to conduct the actual checks using the approved AmeriCorps sources, and then also how you're going to document the compliance with the timing requirements under the federal policy. And then it also should describe the actions each staff, or if it's a single staff member doing it, how they're going to review and then consider the results of each element of the criminal history check in selecting an individual. So it's not enough to just do the checks. You then have to do what's called adjudicate the checks. And again, all of this will be explained in more depth tomorrow. Okay, so policies and processes related to member enrollment and exit. So you need to have a written process that outlines the enrollment and exit steps, including which actual staff member, and you can use position titles. You don't need to use individual names, but position titles. Which staff are going to be actually enrolling and exiting members, and you can have multiple staff members engaged in that process, but if you do, they should all be listed. The actions that must be completed before the members begin service. So there are specific requirements, and it's in the note. We'll talk about it in just a second. But how you're going to make sure that those things that are required to be done are done. The process should spell out your timeline for enrolling and exiting members, and what steps are going to happen when. And generally, it's done in terms of days. So, like, for example, 10 days before the member start date, X happens, or 15 days before the member starts, Y happens, as opposed to specific calendar dates, unless you're absolutely sure that you're going to have a single enrollment date for every single member, and then you could potentially use calendar dates. And then your written process and policy should describe how you're going to review and determine whether or not compelling personal circumstances exist. And that link there, the 4.5 CFR Code of Federal Regulations, section 2522.230, that part of the Code of Federal Regulations explains in depth about personal compelling circumstances. And I think we're going to talk a little bit more about that later, so we won't go any further with that right now. But in the note, you see that programs must enter the applicants into the My AmeriCorps portal, which is done via the e-grant system, prior to the first day of service, and also in sufficient time for the AmeriCorps agency to automatically or manually verify the potential member's Social Security number and citizenship eligibility. So that's just putting them in the portal as an applicant. Members may not start service until their Social Security number and citizenship eligibility has been cleared in the portal. and all of the National Service Criminal History Check components have been completed. And then once you actually get ready to enroll the member via the portal, that has to be done no later than 8 calendar days after the member's start date. And we recommend that you enroll members as quickly as you can after they actually start. And again, there's a distinction between putting the applicants into the portal as applicants, which has to be done before they start service so that their Social Security number and citizenship can be verified. Once all that's done and once the criminal history check has been completed, then you actually take those applicants and enroll them. And that enrollment is what has to be done no later than 8 calendar days after their start date. Okay, Candace, can you move it to the next? Candace, can you hear me? Can anybody hear me, or am I frozen, or is Candace frozen?
We can hear you, Jim.
Okay, good. Okay. Candace may be having issues. I tell you what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and pull up the slides myself. So
I'm actually trying to pull them up too, Jim.
Yeah. Sorry, it's going to take me a second to navigate there.
If you share the Drive link with me and you want someone to still navigate the slides for you, I can totally do that.
No, I mean I don't mind navigating. I just need to need to pull up the file. So but first I need to make sure I'm going to the right place. Let's see. Okay, everyone, I think I'm there. Okay, so let me start this and then turn the screen. Okay. So can everyone see my screen with the slides now? I know it's back at the very beginning, but I'll catch us up. But
yep, I can see them.
Okay, great. Okay. All right. So let's get back to where we were. Okay. So you'll also need to have a timekeeping policy. You should already have a timekeeping policy that covers staff with your agency, because that's generally something that every agency has. But you also need to have one that's specific to the AmeriCorps members. That includes things like who's going to sign the timesheet. So the member obviously has to sign, but some programs have multiple staff sign member timesheets. That policy is up to you and your agency and how you want to handle that, but it needs to be written down on who's going to sign off to verify the member time. And then you need to follow that. So if you say the site supervisor and the program director are going to sign, and we at some point monitor and see a timesheet that only has the member and the site supervisor's signature and the program director hasn't signed it, those hours are going to be called into question. And the general requirements for timekeeping systems is located there in 2 CFR, and again, CFR is Code of Federal Regulations, section 200.430. Some common problems that happen with member timesheets, again, I already talked about signatures not being present, whether it's the member or the supervisor or whoever is listed in your policy as needing to sign, that someone or more than one person doesn't sign it. Another common problem is that members aren't following your lunch break policy and practice, and that should be in your timekeeping policy, how you handle lunch. So there are certain requirements in terms of if a member serves a certain number of hours in a row, then you have to provide them a lunch break, regardless of when they start and stop. You have to give them some time to eat. That process needs to be spelled out in terms of how that works and what instructions you give members on how to record that on their timesheets. And we see a lot of programs that don't follow that policy. The other thing that we see occasionally is where members are given a bonus or unearned hours. That is absolutely not allowed. Members can only get time for their actual service when they are doing service or when they're in training. But you can't just give a member, say, you give them 2 hours for always being on time to meetings just as a reward. You can't do that kind of thing. It has to be based on actual service. Essentially, when they clock in and clock out, that time has to be documented. There's 3 different things on this slide. I apologize if it's a little bit small, but your record keeping policy needs to be in compliance with the AmeriCorps terms and conditions, Roman numeral 9, Part A. And we'll talk about the guide and documents in the next session, a little bit more about the terms and conditions. But every program must follow the requirements that are set out in the terms and conditions, the AmeriCorps state and national terms and conditions. Again, sorry, yeah.
Ashley did have a question in the chat. I didn't know if we were saving questions for the end.
Oh, no, we can go ahead and ask them. Yeah, it's probably better to ask them as they come up so that we don't go too far past them. Ashley says, can time be counted on breaks? No. Again, it can only be time where they're actually in service. So you're more than welcome to give members break time where you say, you take a 15-minute break in the morning and a 15-minute break in the afternoon, but that can't count towards their hours because, again, they're not actively engaged in service. It's the same as lunch. You can give members an hour for lunch, which is kind of standard, but they can't get hours for that hour of lunch. But that is a good question. Okay. So record keeping, additional requirements for record keeping are in 2 CFR section 200.334. And then the actual contract that we have between Volunteer Tennessee and your agency, section D15, includes some record keeping requirements, including that you must maintain records for a full 5 years from the date of final payment for the program. And that's not 5 full years after the end of the contract itself. It's 5 full years from the end, from the final payment that Volunteer Tennessee makes on that contract. So your training plan, and again, you need to have a written training plan on how you're going to bring members up to speed in terms of what AmeriCorps is and national service, kind of briefly, and any training that's necessary for them to actually perform the service that they're going to be doing. The AmeriCorps specific Code of Federal Regulations for training is in a couple sections within the Code of Federal Regulations, 4.5 CFR section 2522.100. And there's a couple sections in that, G2, I, J, and then K1 and 2. Section 2520.50, this talks about the restriction on the aggregate amount of time that members can spend in training. And again, it's aggregate for all the members, not an individual member. And the aggregate limit is 20%. So again, you might have one member, because they're doing something slightly different than the other members, might need 25% of their time in training, but everyone else does 15%. So again, as long as the aggregate balances out across all the members, that no more than 20% of the aggregate time is spent in training, you're okay. And just as a note, there is actually a rule change that's going to take place in October that will allow programs to request waivers for that limit of 20%, specifically for apprenticeship programs, job training and readiness programs, activities to support GED and other credentialing, or if the program is primarily enrolling economically disadvantaged members. That has not gone into effect yet. Again, that happens in October when that rule change goes into effect. But until you request the waiver, your program needs to adhere to the 20% aggregate limit. Then your teleservice policy, if your program allows teleservice, again, you don't have to allow teleservice, but if you do, it has to meet certain requirements. But one is that the members have to get advanced written authorization to do teleservice. They can't just do it on their own, and you can't just verbally say, okay, yeah, you can do it. It needs to be in writing and in advance. The expectations for communications need to be clearly stated in terms of, how the member is going to communicate with supervisors and any other staff that need to be communicated with, and that back and forth between the member. Your teleservice policy has to include steps that mitigate the increased risk of time and attendance abuse, which obviously if someone's off by themselves at their home, it's a bit harder to verify their hours. So your policy needs to address that. It needs to address how the members are going to be adequately supervised, including, again, kind of going back to time, the validation of the activities that the members are performing. And then it also has to include how you're going to verify the hours that are actually being claimed. And those three are all kind of interlinked. Okay, so prohibited activities. They're all listed in 45 CFR 2520.65. And we are going to go into those in a little bit more detail on the next slide. They're also contained in section Roman numeral 5, paragraph C of the terms and conditions for AmeriCorps state and national grants. So what are prohibited activities? So attempting to influence legislation, that's also typically called lobbying. So you can't ask someone to vote for or against any particular legislation. Organizing or engaging in protests, petitions, boycotts, or strikes, assisting, promoting, or deterring union gathering, impairing existing contracts for services or collective bargaining agreements, engaging in partisan political activities, or other activities designed to influence the outcome of an election to any public office. So that's different than the lobbying part. This is specifically saying that you can't use AmeriCorps time, both for members and staff, to engage in political activities. Participating in or endorsing events or activities that are likely to include advocacy for or against political parties, platforms, candidates, or proposed legislation or elected officials. Engaging in religious instruction, conducting worship services, providing instruction as part of a program that includes mandatory religious instruction or worship, constructing or operating facilities devoted to religious instruction or worship, maintaining facilities primarily or inherently devoted to religious instruction or worship, or engaging in any form of religious proselytization. Providing a direct benefit to a business organized for profit, a labor union, a partisan political organization, or a nonprofit that fails to meet the restrictions in Section 501c3 of the Internal Revenue Code related to engaging in political activities or substantial amount of lobbying, except that nothing in these provisions is to be construed as preventing individual participants from engaging in advocacy activities undertaken at their own time, at their own initiative and on their own time. Providing a benefit to an organization engaged in religious activities described in the paragraph 7 above that talked about proselytization in religious activities. And then let's see, conducting voter registration drive or using AmeriCorps funds to conduct voter registration drives, providing abortion services or referrals for receipt of such services and such other activities as AmeriCorps may prohibit. And that's pretty generic, but that would have to be spelled out and be clear, including this last one that AmeriCorps has decided, and this isn't in that 4.5 CFR. This is a separate that kind of falls under that 11. AmeriCorps has prohibited that that anyone engage in census activities or election and polling activities using AmeriCorps time. And again, this applies to staff and AmeriCorps members, or sorry, staff that are supported using either AmeriCorps funds or matching funds.
Okay. We have another question.
Yeah.
From Ashley. Is there in-depth guidance on what would be expected in adequate supervision for a teleservice member?
That is a good question. There is a specific AmeriCorps teleservice policy, and I don't think I've made a reference to it. Let me go back to that slide. Yeah, I didn't put the specific reference to the AmeriCorps, the federal AmeriCorps policy, but there is a written policy that explains a little bit more about all of those things. And I don't recall right offhand if it goes into too much detail about adequate supervision for a teleservice member, but in general, adequate supervision for a teleservice member would be the same for a member that's in person. So, being able to verify that their time and their activities are accurately, that are reported on their timesheet are accurate, providing support for them if they have questions or problems, those kinds of things, and just generally providing them with the kind of supervision that they would need to be successful in their service. Yeah, and then it looks like Neelam has pulled up the AmeriCorps terms and conditions have a section. It has an entire section on supervision and support, and it talks. That is what is. Let's see, I didn't put that in here either, but it's section Roman numeral 5 is the supervision and support section. And Latifah's looking on Basecamp right now. So we'll get back to you if we find anything that goes into a little bit more detail on that. But the first place to go is always the terms and conditions, and then any written policy that the AmeriCorps agency has. And again, there is a written policy at the AmeriCorps level on teleservice. Okay, let me hop back to where I was. Okay, so member management. So in member management in general, one of the things you have to do is ensure that you are maintaining the required documentation for every member. And this is not necessarily a full list. There is a checklist as noted here on the slide in Basecamp and also in the Program Director Handbook. But some of the highlights of things that must be included in the member file, the results of their National Service Criminal History Check, the Social Security and Citizenship Eligibility Verification, unless it's verified through the AmeriCorps, the My AmeriCorps portal. The actual signed member service agreement, and it must be signed by all parties. So if you list on the signature page the member and the program director, both of those need to sign that, and that a copy needs to be in the member file. The member timesheets, and then the member performance reviews, and there are different requirements based on the amount of time that the member serves, what's required for that performance review in terms of the timing, but those performance reviews must be in the member file. And then any circumstances related to an early exit should be documented in the member file, and that includes with or without personal compelling circumstances. Again, I think we're going to talk a little bit more about personal compelling circumstances in just a second. And just a note, programs can store all of these files electronically and use electronic signatures if the program can ensure the validity and integrity of the record and the signature is maintained. So, and again, if you're going to have a electronic file storage system, it just needs to make sure that it has in place a way to validate the signatures and that all of this stuff is accurate. Okay, so now we're going to talk a little bit about some of the specifics of enrolling members. And again, this is a high level discussion. We will kind of go through the steps, but we're going to go through the steps quickly. But in general, the first step is preparing for the member enrollment. So you complete the national service. The staff have to actually complete required National Service Criminal History Check training, and you have to have at least one person from your agency complete that training. My recommendation is that anybody that's engaged in any part of the National Service Criminal History Check process go through that required training. You have to make sure that the service locations are set up where the member is going to actually serve, and this is kind of background work for starting the program in general. Then you create service opportunity listings in the My AmeriCorps portal for people to find and select those service opportunities. If you're using the portal to actually actively recruit and have members apply, you can also have members apply outside of the portal system, but at some point you're going to have to put those applicants into the portal as we discussed earlier. Then the next step is to actually identify the members that you're going to bring on board. So the individual will apply, again, that's either inside or outside of the My AmeriCorps portal system. Then you're going to screen each applicant, including, gathering general information about the applicant, including the information that you need to verify their citizenship and do the criminal history check, that kind of thing. Complete the criminal history check, and then determine their eligibility. Then you're going to actually select the members. And so again, if they're not applying directly through the portal, you're going to have to put them into the portal as an applicant to be able to then select them and enroll them. So in general, it's easier if you just send everybody to the portal to apply. But if you want to have a separate system for having members apply, that's okay. The applicant is going to complete the enrollment form in the portal, and then the Social Security number check, and then the citizenship verification happens. Then the enrollment you have the verification of the eligibility, then the actual process of enrollment includes both the option to do individual enrollment or group enrollments. And then the member has to do a partial award acknowledgement if that applies. That's probably not going to be most members. Most members are going to get the full award based on their time, the slot that they're filling. Okay, so this is a shot of eGrants and where the portal lives. You can see that red arrow points to the portal home. You click that, and then it takes you into the portal itself. Again, you have to first create the service opportunity listing in the portal. And as you can see, there's quite a lot of information there that you'll have to put in for each service opportunity. Now, if all of your members are doing the same thing, then you can just have a single service opportunity listing. But if you're having the members do different things, you're going to have to create different service opportunity listings for each type of service that the members are doing. Okay, so then again, once you've decided to invite a member to be part of the program, you enter in their personal information. And again, this screenshot is a little bit small, but it's clear when you get into the portal exactly what's required. And anything that has an asterisk in front of it is required by the system, so you can't leave those fields blank. If a member is serving with another program immediately before coming to your program, that member is going to have to be exited by that other program first before you can actually start the enrollment process. Then, there is an option to conduct batch uploads for enrollment. If you're interested in doing that, contact Latifa on how to go about doing batch uploads. So the member invitation, you can see the little note up at the top. This is essentially a copy of what the member will receive, including, and I know it's kind of hard to see because it's all kind of up here in this blue box, but that's what the member will receive with a link that they will then need to click on to enroll. That link connects them directly to the portal where they'll have to verify their identity. And please stress to your members that it is a secure site and that the information they enter must be accurate with no errors. So if they tell you that they don't want to enter information in here, that's going to be a problem because they have to, in order to verify, again, eligibility for the program. Hyphens, spaces, multiple middle or last names are examples of things that cause common errors between what's entered into the system and what's actually on the government ID. Because if there's a discrepancy between what the members enter on the system and what's shown on their ID, that's going to cause problems. Another important note is that that link that's in that email will be broken if you resend the invitation or you delete the invitation in the portal. And I'm sorry, we're going through all this pretty quickly again because it's I understand it's really hard for sorry, I'm just looking at the chat to make sure. Sorry, just looking at the chat, make sure there weren't any questions that hadn't been answered. We're going through this kind of quickly, and again, it's hard for you all to, without actually be doing this yourself with the computer right in front of you. It's not going to make a whole lot of sense until you actually start doing it. But this is just to give you an idea of what it looks like. So this is the enrollment form that you'll see in the portal. And there's lots of information that you'll have to put in order to actually enroll the member. So in terms of confirming the Social Security number and citizenship eligibility, there are several status types. Open is that the member has been invited to participate in the program, but hasn't yet either created or updated and saved the information in the portal. Pending means that their name, Social Security number, date of birth have been sent to the Social Security Administration, but the results haven't been returned yet. Verified means that the eligibility has been verified, both the Social Security and citizenship. Returned means that the individual was not verified automatically. That doesn't mean that they're not eligible. It just means that there was some sort of problem with the automatic system that tries to verify the Social Security number and citizenship eligibility automatically online. And that means that you're going to have to submit some additional documentation in order to prove eligibility. Then manually verified means that, again, there's been some sort of problem with the automatic verification. The program has submitted the additional documentation and it's been manually verified. And manually verified and the automatically verified are the same in terms of that means that the member has been verified as being eligible. And then cannot be verified means that there's some sort of problem with either the Social Security number or the citizenship. And if you think that the member is actually a citizen and should be eligible, you can contact, and just to be upfront, I'm not sure that email is correct, but should be an email in the system itself that you can contact. And I think it's probably also on Basecamp somewhere. If you think that a member should be verified as eligible but has been determined cannot be verified, you can request that that be reviewed. Okay, some additional information about SSN and citizenship verification. Once the member saves the information in the enrollment form, and the citizenship eligibility verification process is initiated and the portal submits the record to the Social Security Administration. Sorry, I didn't say that very clearly, but they enter the stuff and it goes automatically to the Social Security Administration to be verified. SSA checks the member's citizenship status and their Social Security number validity within 3 business days. Sometimes it happens quicker. The record indicates verified, or if it's not verified, returned. Again, if there's some sort of issue for both the SSN and citizenship. So both of those need to be returned as verified in order for the member to be eligible. Either verified or manually verified has to be on the record for both SSN and citizenship. And you can see there at the bottom on the left is an example of what it will look like in the portal if both have been verified. You see it says verified, and then it has the date that verification was completed. And then on the right is an example where part of it has been verified. The Social Security has been verified, but the citizenship has been returned. And again, that means that you'll have to provide some additional documentation and it'll have to be manually verified. Okay, manual verification. If they're not automatically verified, then you're going to have to provide some additional information. You will need to request a secure file link from the National Service Hotline and then submit the required documents. That hyperlink is where you would go to request the help desk ticket online. There's also a phone number that you can call that actually isn't on this slide, but I'm pretty sure it's in the Program Director Handbook. Be sure to request a ticket number if you're calling them by phone. If you're doing it online, it's automatically going to generate the number. But if you're calling on the phone, you need to make sure that they give you that number. We recommend that you take screenshots to verify that you have uploaded the information and that upload has been complete, because there have been problems in the past where program staff have uploaded documents and they just somehow or another they disappear into the system, and you'll need to be able to verify and document that you've actually done it, so that you can verify that you're staying on the required timelines. If the information you submit is sufficient to verify eligibility, then the AmeriCorps will update the record to manually verified within 3 business days. If you don't receive that verification, you're not going to receive any kind of email notification that it's been changed, the status has been changed to manually verified. So you're going to have to go into the portal and check to see when it actually changes. Okay, so after the SSN and citizenship verification has happened, just as a note, you can't start the members until both of those have been verified, either verified or manually verified. And you can see there again, there's a bigger screenshot of what it will look like in the portal when both of those have been verified, and again, the date that the verification has happened. Okay, so the National Service Criminal History Check Date field on the enrollment form, you'll see there you put that date in. Then completing the enrollment form, you'll enter the member placement information and make sure that you include the start date, the program year, the program title. All of that information is going to need to be, oops, I'm sorry, accidentally zoomed in on the screen. Sorry, where was I? The operating site name, service location, all of that, and slot type, all of that's going to need to go into the enrollment form. Once it's all been entered correctly, the enroll member button will become active. It won't show until you put in all the information, or it won't show as active until you put in all the information. You can put all the information in and save it ahead of time, except the member start date and slot type, which cannot be saved prior to the date of enrollment. So again, all the other stuff you can go in and put it in and save it. And then when you go back to actually complete the enrollment, you'll have to put in those additional things. Then you click the enroll member. And again, just as a reminder, you have 8 days from when the member starts to complete the enrollment. Okay, some general enrollment tips. Make sure you build in time to your process to include potential for the need for manual verification if the citizenship and Social Security numbers get bumped back. Make sure that the incoming members know that they are going to get an email invitation and that they need to go online and fill out the forms and do that as quickly as possible, because you can't continue the process until they've done their part and that they've accepted the invitation. Do regular and potentially daily and as needed audits of the member verification status while you're waiting for that to come back. Again, you're not going to get an email saying that members have been verified. You're just going to have to go in and check. Document all interactions that you have with the help desk. Again, including saving screenshots when necessary and when applicable. Obviously, if you're calling them on the phone, you're not going to be able to do screenshots, but take notes and write down dates and times that you talk to the help desk. Run an enrollment report before the end of the 8-day enrollment period to make sure that all of your members show that they are actively enrolled. And if you have members who have a later start date because they were manually verified, Be sure to track the hours for that member, that member or those members throughout the year, but to ensure that they are on track to fulfill their hours. Because if their enrollment is delayed, obviously from when everybody else enrolls, they're potentially going to have less time to complete the program. So you'll just need to make sure you stay on top of that. Okay, member exits. The member is going to fill out the AmeriCorps exit survey via the portal. You're going to have to unlock that form before they can do it. And if the member doesn't respond to that, you need to document your efforts to try and get them to do it. The exit can still be completed if they don't do that survey, but you'll have to do an additional step. And again, you need to document your efforts to try and make sure that they do it. Ensure that the program staff and members complete, sign and date everything, including the end of term evaluation, and that's in the member file. Ensure the member and supervisor have completed and approved the member's final timesheet. And if you're exiting the member for compelling personal circumstances, be sure that you collect and maintain all pertinent documentation related to that personal compelling circumstance. All exits must happen no more than 30 days after the member's last day of service. So you've got a little bit more time to complete exits, but I would recommend that you do them as quickly after the member exits as possible, because if you wait and delay, it will kind of catch up with you and you'll be overwhelmed with trying to do a bunch of exits all at the same time. This is where you'll find within the portal where you'll find the member exit. You see that arrow there on the left-hand side. And you can see on the right-hand side, the status of the various members. Not started means that the member's portion of the exit form hasn't been completed yet. Submitted means that the member has completed their part of the exit. This is what the exit form looks like in the portal. Again, there's lots of things that you as the program manager or director are going to have to click on and verify. And again, just to reiterate that, well, sorry, not to reiterate, but the exit form will be on the member's homepage about 30 days prior to the end of their service date. So that form should show up for them to be able to do 30 days before the end of their service. And that end of service date is what you will put in at the very beginning when they start their term in the enrollment form. So the system knows what their end date is supposed to be. So again, we talked about if a member doesn't actually complete the exit survey, you'll have to click an additional box saying that they didn't respond. So you'll see at the top the confirmation that the exit form has been saved. Then you see down at the bottom is where you click to actually exit the member. And that opens the exit form, and where you go into the previous slide that showed the actual exit form. That's where you click on it to open that form. You will need to verify the hours of service. That box will automatically show up with a 0 in it, so you need to put in the correct hours. I don't believe the system allows decimals. I don't think. I could be wrong about that. Latifa, if you know, feel free to speak up, but I think it probably needs to be entered in whole numbers. Let's see. Then you'll select, unfortunately that the screenshot doesn't show the options when under that select education award status, but you have the option of exiting them with the full award or with a partial award or with no award, or essentially the options. And then you have to click whether or not they satisfactorily completed the requirements. And then below there are some certifications that the program staff have to click to certify various things. Oh, there's the drop down of the select. So you can see there that they're eligible for the entire award, the partial award, and then there are a couple reasons for why they're not eligible for the award, and you would select the one that applies. AmeriCorps State and National aren't eligible for an alternative benefit, so that one I don't think is going to show, or if it does show, you shouldn't select that because that's not an option for AmeriCorps State and National. That is an option for AmeriCorps Vista. Okay, so again, this is what the message that you'll see at the top when you've actually exited the member. Down at the bottom right, you'll see the end date, the actual date that they end and that you complete the exit form with the exit date will show up in the bottom right-hand corner. This is for a member who's exiting early, so before their anticipated end date. You're going to manually have to place the exit form in the pending exit work basket for the member who needs to be exited. And so let's see, that process is you'll have to unlock the form, and you can see that link that says unlock form. And then when you do that, the member is going to appear in your pending exit work basket, and the exit form is going to be available. And then from there, you go through the same steps that we went through just a second ago to exit the member. But again, if they're exiting early, you're going to have to do an additional step. Okay, so compelling personal circumstances. We've touched on this very briefly a couple times, but you may release a AmeriCorps member early upon a determination by the program staff that the member has a condition that's consistent with the criteria listed in the federal regulations for compelling personal circumstance, which the two primary criteria for that is one, that it makes the member unable to complete their term of service, and two, that it's a situation that's beyond their control. So it has to be something that completes them from finishing. If they've already completed 15% of their hours or more, you can exit them early with a prorated award. If they've served less than 15%, they won't get a prorated award, but that term also will not count against their maximum number of terms that they can serve. So they have to at least have completed 15% of their term in order to get a partial education award. But let's see, and then you need to make sure you maintain the documentation for how you determine that a personal compelling circumstance exists. And there's additional information about personal compelling circumstances, I believe, in the terms and conditions and also in the program director handbook. But here are some examples of what is included as something that is beyond the member's control. And this isn't a full list. These are just some examples. So they have some sort of disability or serious illness, or the disability comes on, or the serious illness comes on while they're serving. The disability, serious illness, or death of a family member, if that makes it unreasonable for the member to finish their term, or other conditions attributable to the program that are otherwise unforeseeable, which can include a variety of things, including natural disaster, strike, the relocation of a member's spouse, if your program isn't renewed or closes early, and all of that makes any of those make it difficult for the member to complete the term. And then the AmeriCorps has specifically designated some public policy reasons for ending a term early, including military service obligations, acceptance by a participant. Sorry, am I no longer sharing my screen? Can you all see that?
I can still see your screen, Jim.
Yeah,
but
sorry,
while we have a moment, you probably have about 3 or 4 more slides left. Did you want to finish up, or did you want to go ahead and take a break right now?
Well, if everybody's well, what's the consensus of the group? We do have, for this section, we've got let's see, about 7 more slides. They're not all as detailed as some of the ones that we've just been going through.
Okay. Well, if I could, oops, sorry. Ashley said, "Go ahead and power on."
Okay. Well, we'll keep going. Okay. So, so going back to the policy reasons for an early exit, acceptance by the member of an opportunity to make the transition from welfare to work, or acceptance of employment opportunity by a member in a program that specifically includes in your approved, it says objectives, but performance measures of the promotion of employment among its members. So you can't just exit a member early because they have taken a job. It has to be something that's in your performance measures, essentially as being something to transition AmeriCorps members that are typically economically disadvantaged into a work situation, and that has to be in your performance measures. Okay, so that was all talking about exiting a member early for compelling personal circumstances. You can also release a member early for cause. Now, cause can both include things that are related to disciplinary issues, but also non-disciplinary issues. So, for example, if the member just quits, you're going to exit that member for cause. Exiting a member for cause is everything that's not compelling personal circumstance, but that the member is leaving the program early. So if you're releasing a member for cause early, or if you're releasing a member for cause, they will not receive any portion of the AmeriCorps Education Award or any other type of payment from the trust, regardless of how many hours they have served. You must release a member for cause for any participant who is convicted of a felony or the sale or distribution of a controlled substance during their term. And that's convicted. Now, if they're accused, you can suspend them for a period of time. If they're found innocent, then you can bring them back to the program. But if they're found guilty or if they're convicted, then you have to exit them for cause. A member who's released for misconduct is not eligible to serve in AmeriCorps again. So again, there's a distinction between exiting a member for cause, which again, cause is any reason that's not a compelling personal circumstance. But misconduct is specifically something that the member has done, that violates your rules within the member service agreement, or any kind of activity or behavior that is seriously problematic. That again, usually all of this, well, it should all be spelled out in the member service agreement. The reasons why a member could be exited for misconduct, but that makes the member ineligible to serve again. Okay, so financial management for program directors. So you should be familiar with your periodic expense reports and your financial status reports. You should be familiar with member time reporting. Specifically, this is talking about fixed amount grantees. And then there's a budget revision process for cost reimbursement grantees that you should be familiar with. And we'll talk about each of those very quickly. So PERs and FSRs, the periodic expense report serves as the invoice from the program. Typically, that invoice is submitted by your financial person, but you should understand what's in that periodic expense report and at least have a working knowledge of where those expenses come from. The PER can be submitted for invoices no more than once per month, but should be submitted at least once per quarter. They should be actual expenses and should not be based on estimates or, for example, by dividing the budgeted expense by 12. It has to be the actual expense. The email that you use to send the invoice must include the total amount in the body of the email. And those directions are separate, and we provide those with programs for the purposes of submitting invoices. The financial status report is done quarterly, and the Volunteer Tennessee program managers will provide feedback on the general status of the program, including enrollment, retention, and the status of member forms. And that feedback may require a response from the program. So you'll want to coordinate with your financial person to make sure that you're adequately responding to any feedback. Okay, member time reporting, and again, this is specifically for fixed amount grants. Fixed amount grantees can only, fixed amount grantees can only draw down funds based on the actual number of members enrolled and the number of hours that each member has served. It's very important to input accurate member hours into the workbook that we provide. And it's on the member hour calculator tab. Because if the hours aren't correct, then the amount of reimbursement won't be correct. And Volunteer Tennessee will disallow funds if it's found that the hours are not correct and don't reflect what's reported in the timesheets. And again, just to restate, you must keep the timesheets as documentation of the member service hours. Okay, budget revisions. Again, you would work with your financial people to submit a budget revision. This is just a screenshot of part of the form. It's and again, this is for cost reimbursement grants. And you would propose the revised amount for each line item. If you're not changing anything, it would obviously stay the same. This worksheet gets submitted to your program manager, and then they give the approval. Okay, so that's a lot of stuff that we just covered. And I think we answered the questions as they kind of were coming up in the chat.
Yes.
But
yes.
Is there anything that we didn't answer?
Hey, Jim, it's Ashley. I had one that kind of got mushed in with all the rest.
Yeah.
And it was, if there is a member who does not use or has accessibility issues using electronic applications, can the program help enter the potential member's information on their behalf?
Yes, I believe so. And Latifa might want to chime in on that. I think there is a process for making that work. I'm not familiar enough with the day-to-day workings of the portal to know specifically how that works, but I think there is a way that you can do that if the member just doesn't have access to a computer.
Ashley, if you don't mind, I will note that question, and when Latifa returns for her portion of the presentation at 1 o'clock, we'll get that answer for you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Did you have any other questions that got lost in the chat, or are you good to go?
No, I think I'm good. Thank y'all.
You're good. Okay, you're welcome. And did anyone else have any questions? I know Jim did kind of go over a lot, so we have compelling personal circumstances and exits, e-grants. Any additional questions? Prohibited activities is something else that we went over. Policy and procedures. Okay.
And I would just recommend that everybody go to Basecamp and look at the program director manual that's available there on Basecamp, because it goes through all of these things, and most of the things have a little bit more detail in the program director handbook. I don't know if it goes over the financial stuff very much, but all the other member management stuff and kind of the policies, requirements, all that stuff, I think should be in the program director handbook.
Okay. Jim, do you need a minute to sort of catch your breath for the next portion? Is guiding documents. It's a whole lot shorter. It's about 5 or 6 slides. So I want to be respectful to my presenter.
Yeah.
If you need a break, we can take about a 5-minute break, or since our session is due to be over with for the first session at 11 o'clock, I'll leave that up to you.
Well, let's see. Well, I think the next session I think is much shorter.
Much shorter, yeah.
So I think we can catch up. So I would recommend that we go ahead and take a really quick, maybe instead of a 10-minute break, maybe a 5-minute break.
Yeah,
just
sure.
to give people enough time to maybe refill coffee, use the restroom, that kind of thing.
Absolutely. So it is, by my clock, 10:36. So we will come back now it's 10:37. So we will come back in 5 minutes at 10:42 to wrap up this morning. So we will see you guys here in just a second.
And Candace, hi, I'm going to go ahead and drop. Thanks.
Okay. All right.
See ya.
think I like having your side.
All right. It is 10:42, everyone. We're going to go ahead and resume. So if you guys could, I'll come back to your cameras. Jim has one more short session to do before 11 o'clock. And Jim, I think my internet is okay, but if you don't mind, it's a tornado watch here. But do you mind just do you want me to
No,
run your slides, or do you have it?
No,
I
I can do it. Yeah, it's
okay.
no problem.
Thank you.
Okay. So, welcome back, everyone, from break. We're going to get started with the next section, and again, this will be a good bit shorter, but we're going to talk about the guiding documents for AmeriCorps and your program. So it's really, really important stuff, because these documents include kind of the foundation of the requirements for what you all need to do in terms of being in compliance with federal rules and regulations. Okay. So what is a guiding document? Okay. So these are the different types of guiding documents. So the primary is the federal authorizing legislation for AmeriCorps. Then there are what are called either a notice of funding opportunity or notice of funding availability, a NOFA, NOFO or NOFA, and then request for proposal and request for assistance. AmeriCorps doesn't use for the type of programs that we're talking about. We're not really talking about RFPs or RFAs. We're primarily talking about the notice of funding opportunity or the notice of funding availability. And really the only difference between the NOFO and the NOFA, the NOFO, the opportunity, is when the amount of funding has not yet been set by Congress. So there's an opportunity for funding, but the amount isn't set. The availability is when the amount of funding has actually been set by Congress and appropriated, and everybody knows how much money is available. So it's available as opposed an availability as opposed to an opportunity. Then there are the actual application instructions and other documents that come along with the application, including the mandatory supplemental guidance that comes along with the notice and the application instructions. Then the application that you all actually submit to Volunteer Tennessee and that gets approved for funding is part of the guiding documents, because that's where you lay out what you are proposing to do with the program and with the members and the federal funds that are flowing through to your program. Then there is the notice of grant award that comes directly to Volunteer Tennessee. You all will not get a notice of grant award. Sorry, just looking. Yeah, you all will not get the notice of grant award. That comes directly to us, but we will have a state contract with your agency, and we do have state contracts with your agencies. And those together are kind of on that notice of grant award piece of the pie there. Then we've already talked a little bit about the terms and conditions. And there are two different types, and we'll talk a little bit more about the two different types in just a second. And those are updated generally on an annual basis. Then there is the uniform guidance that's included in 2 CFR, and then the AmeriCorps specific Code of Federal Regulations, which is included in 445 CFR. And then there are National Service Criminal History Check enforcement guides and manuals and policies that are specific to the National Service Criminal History Check. Okay, so to start off with the first two segments of that pie, the authorizing legislation, the first was the National and Community Service Act of 1990. That was then revised in 1993 by the National and Community Service Trust Act. And then those two were amended again by the Serve America Act in 2009. So the Serve America Act of 2009 is the most recent update of the federal national service legislation related to AmeriCorps state and national. We talked about the notice of funding opportunity availability. The notice includes required program elements and also fiscal requirements. It includes various terms and definitions. Typically, it includes general information about the award type. And again, here we're talking specifically about AmeriCorps state and national. And it also includes information about compliance. Oh, there's a photo. Okay, so the application instructions and then other documents. I mentioned earlier the mandatory supplemental guidance that goes along with the application instructions and the notice of funding opportunity. There's the actual application instructions themselves. And within that are instructions related to performance measures. Then your actual application, again, includes your program design, where you tell us what you're going to be doing with the AmeriCorps members and the federal resources that flow through to your program. And included along with your program design are your performance measures, where you give us specific countables of what you're going to achieve with your AmeriCorps program. Your application obviously will include the total dollar amount of your grant. That includes the federal and grantee share if applicable. And the grantee share is only applicable for cost reimbursement grants. The fixed amount grants only have the federal share. Your application also should include, if you have it, an indirect cost rate and what that indirect cost rate is. And it also includes the budget. And for cost reimbursement grants, it'll have a budget narrative that goes through line by line and gives a cost basis for how you came up with the expenses for each line item. Okay, so the state contract will include the start and end dates, the current amount of funding obligated by Volunteer Tennessee to your agency, and if there's any match, that will also be in the contract as part of the budget that will be an attachment. And again, fixed amount grants don't have match. It also will include various state and federal requirements. The terms and conditions include a detailed guidance on the specific requirements of how to implement your AmeriCorps grant. And there are two types. There are general terms and conditions that apply to all of the different types of grants that the AmeriCorps agency administers. And then there will be program specific. And again, the program that we're specifically talking about for the purposes of today are the AmeriCorps state and national program specific terms and conditions. Okay, so then there's the uniform guidance and the AmeriCorps specific Code of Federal Regulations. These are hyperlinked. I'm not going to click on them, but when you get the copy of this slide presentation, in Basecamp, you can click and it'll take you directly to CFR, which is applies to all federal grants and agreements, not just AmeriCorps, but everything that the federal government does. And then again, the 4.5 CFR, which is under the public welfare section of the CFR, has a section specific to the AmeriCorps agency, and it's 4.5 CFR 2500, et cetera. There are lots of sections under that particular section. Then the other kind of big guiding document that we mentioned in that pie is the National Service Criminal History Check Manual, and it includes the process that you're required to follow for conducting a compliant criminal history check. And again, there's a link there that you can click and go directly to it. You can also go to the AmeriCorps website and pretty quickly find the National Service Criminal History Check information. Okay, so those are the guiding documents. I know that was kind of a quick rundown, but if there are any questions, and I'll actually go back to the very first slide that had, or not the first slide, but the second slide that has them all listed together. And if anybody has any question about any part of these guiding documents, we can go into a little bit more depth. But just know that all of these documents are important for you to at least have a working familiarity with. You don't have to know word by word and section by section what's in each one of these, but you should at least be familiar enough with them to be able to go to them and find things to answer questions that you might have about the program and what's allowable, what's not allowable, those kinds of things. Yeah, so Ashley asked, most are on the website. All of these will be on the website except your except the notice of grant award and the contract that we have with you. And your application is also not going to be on the AmeriCorps website either, but you should have access to that because it's something that you all enter into eGrants. Everything else should be on the AmeriCorps page. They're not all located in the same place on the AmeriCorps website, but they're all there, and you can do a search and find them pretty easily. And they do have a page on their website that has the listing of all of the various legislations or legislation that's been passed over the years. So you can go to those, and I'm pretty sure that same page has links to the Code of Federal Regulations.
Do we have any other questions out there? Do we have any other questions about the guiding document? Okay. Well, thank you, Jim, for the biggest round of applause. I appreciate you coming through about any program and financial management and guiding documents. We are at our 2-hour break time, so grab a lunch, try to figure out what's going on with the weather if you're in an area that has some weather issues. We will be back at 1 o'clock Central Time to go over monitoring and a brief overview, and also to go over branding and communication. So you guys will hear from our communications manager and also I have to get used to her new title, our director of service. So they will be here from 1 to 3. And then afterwards, we'll pick up on what we have going on for tomorrow for the end of this new program and new staff retreat. But if there are no more questions, then we can go ahead and release you all and see you guys back here at 1 o'clock Central Time, 2 o'clock Eastern. All right, guys, we'll see you here soon. Bye. See you at 1 o'clock. You have a question, Mary?
Hey, Candace, I just wanted to remind you, I sent it in my initial email, but I can't be here this afternoon because I'm on a panel this afternoon.
Oh, because I'll be awesome. Well, I am going to, by the end of the week, I will have all of these portions on Basecamp for you to go back and review. And I'm going to break them up so that in the half of the day. So
Okay.
I'll put them on Basecamp and then I'll put the notice out when it's available to view for you.
Okay, perfect. That sounds
Okay.
great.
Good luck on your panel, Mary.
Thank you. Have
You're
a good
welcome.
one.
You
Thanks. See you
too. Bye.
tomorrow.